kill Breeze and
Mm-hmm.
how Omari and I came up with it, which I think was a really cool idea, is that Tommy had the drop on Breeze, could have taken him, could have taken all the glory, but let Ghost have that kill because he knew that that would advance him. And Tommy somehow, without even realizing it, just having it, just knew that Ghost needed to lead and Tommy needed to follow.
What if everything you thought you knew about Ghost, Tommy, and Kanan was only half the story? Before Power, before Club Truth, before Betrayal and Blood, there was a brotherhood built in the streets. And now, with the first official teaser for Power Origins, we're finally starting to see where it all began: the choices, the influence, the manipulation, and the moments that quietly shaped the men who would later define the entire Power universe. This isn't just another spin-off. This is the missing chapter, and it's closer than you think. Now in today's breakdown, we're talking all things Power Origins, specifically the teaser that's officially put this series on the map and what it tells us about Season 1, along with realistic release date expectations. Because while the teaser itself was short, subtle, and quiet, the implications behind it are anything but small. In fact, this might be one of the most important setups the Power universe has ever done. The teaser dropped with a simple but powerful message: Power Origins is coming soon. All legends start somewhere, and that line alone tells you exactly what type of story this series is aiming to tell. This isn't about recreating moments we've already seen. This isn't about fan service for the sake of it. This is about context. This is about understanding how Ghost, Tommy, and Kanan became who they were long before we ever met them in Power. One thing that's already very clear is that when we meet these characters in Power Origins, they won't be kids figuring things out from scratch. Just like with raising Kanan, there's a process, but there's also momentum. Ghost and Tommy won't be strangers to the streets. They'll already be in the game. They'll already be moving weight, building relationships, making mistakes, and learning lessons that will define them for life. The teaser doesn't show chaos, it shows control. And that alone tells you a lot about where they are mentally and emotionally at the start of this story. What makes Power Origins different from anything else we've seen is that we already know how this ends, but we don't know how it truly began. We know Ghost becomes obsessed with control. We know Tommy becomes loyal to a fault. And we know Kanan becomes one of the most manipulative chess players the game has ever seen. But the question has always been, who taught who, and how much of that brotherhood was built on love versus influence and manipulation? The teaser doesn't answer those questions directly, but it doesn't need to. The tone alone does the talking. There's no loud music, no dramatic monologues, just presence. And that's intentional. Power has always been about what's said between the lines, the silences, the looks, the decisions made quietly that later explode into consequences. Now, let's talk timing. As of right now, there is no official release date, but we do know filming began in late 2025. By mid-December, production was already moving through early episodes, which tells us this isn't a rushed project. This is something Stars and the Power team are taking their time with. And that matters, because Power Origins isn't just another chapter, it's the foundation. Season 1 is confirmed to have 18 episodes, and realistically, that almost guarantees a split season. 2 parts, 2 phases, one setting the groundwork, and the other pulling the trigger on major turning points. Based on production timelines and how Stars typically rolls out its biggest shows, the most realistic window for Power Origins is late 2206, likely in the fall. And if Raising Kanan Season 5 lands earlier that year, it would make perfect sense for Power Origins to follow right after, keeping the universe connected and the momentum alive. What's important to understand here is that Power Origins isn't being positioned as a side story. It's being positioned as the spine of the entire franchise. This is where the philosophies are formed. This is where the rules of the game are learned. And this is where the emotional bonds that later turn into betrayals are first built. And as we move deeper into this breakdown, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. This series isn't just about Ghost, Tommy, or Kanan individually. It's about the space between them, the trust, the loyalty, the moments that made them brothers, and the cracks that were always there, even at the beginning. Because legends don't just start somewhere. They start with choices. When we talk about power origins, the real heartbeat of this series isn't the drugs, the money, or the violence. It's the relationship between Ghost, Tommy, and Kanan. Because everything that happens later in Power, every betrayal, every death, every impossible decision, can be traced back to this bond and how it was formed. And that's exactly why this story matters so much. From what the teaser and early information suggest, Ghost and Tommy won't just be street-level hustlers trying to survive. They'll already be running an operation. They'll already have people working under them. And that immediately raises questions about how they got there, and, more importantly, who helped shape them into leaders. And that's where Kanan comes in. Because even back in the original Power, it was always clear that Kanan had an outsized influence on Ghost, especially in Ghost's early years. There's a line from Power that still carries weight today. Tommy saying there wasn't a good idea Ghost didn't steal from Kanan. That wasn't said as a joke, that was said as truth. And Power Origins finally gives us the chance to see that play out in real time, not just in big moments, but in small ones. The conversations, the lessons, the way Kanan frames the world for Ghost and Tommy. Because manipulation doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it looks like guidance, sometimes it looks like protection, and sometimes it looks like love. One of the most interesting things about Kanan as a character is that he doesn't just manipulate people for power. He manipulates through emotion, through loyalty, through shared pain. And when you think about Ghost's past, especially the loss of his father, it becomes clear why Kanan's presence would have mattered so much. Kanan wasn't just a mentor, he was someone who stood next to Ghost during one of the most defining moments of his life. And that kind of bond doesn't disappear easily, no matter how things end. This is why Ghost could kill Breeze, but couldn't kill Kanan. That distinction has always been important. Breeze was family. Ghost said that himself. But Kanan was something different. Kanan was history, influence, foundation. And Power Origins is where we'll finally understand why that line was drawn, why Ghost could justify one but not the other, and how much of that decision was Ghost's own choice versus years of conditioning. Tommy's role in this dynamic is just as important, because Tommy has always been the most emotionally driven out of the three. His loyalty is pure, but it's also dangerous. And when you place Tommy between Ghost's ambition and Kanan's manipulation, you start to see how fragile this triangle really was from the beginning. Tommy didn't just choose sides later on. He was shaped into who he became by the choices Ghost and Kanan made early on, often without him fully realizing it. What makes Power Origins so compelling is that we're not going into this blind. We already know who these men become. The tension comes from watching the seeds get planted, watching moments that seem small at the time but later explain everything. A decision to trust someone, a lesson about money, a lesson about power, a lesson about control. These are the things that turn boys into legends and brothers into enemies. And this is also where the theme of choice becomes critical. Did Ghost really have a choice? Or was the path already decided for him by his environment, his losses, and the people guiding him? The idea of the blue pill versus the red pill has always existed in Power, the illusion of escape versus the reality of survival. Ghost had opportunities to leave the life behind, but every influence around him pulled him deeper into it. And Kanan was often the voice reminding him that power was the only real protection. As Power Origins unfolds, the biggest question won't be who betrays who. We already know that answer. The real question is this: how much of that betrayal was inevitable, and how much of it was written years before, when trust was being built instead of broken? Because before Power fell apart, the Brotherhood came first. As we look ahead to Power Origins Season 1, it becomes clear that this series isn't just filling in gaps, it's recontextualizing everything we thought we understood about the Power universe. This isn't about retelling familiar moments. It's about revealing the unseen forces that shaped them. And that's why the timing, the structure, and the storytelling approach of this show all matter more than ever. With filming already well underway and an 18-episode first season confirmed, the structure alone tells us this story is meant to breathe. This isn't a rushed origin story designed to hit quick nostalgia beats. It's a long-form character study, and with that many episodes, there's room to move between timelines, perspectives, and emotional states without sacrificing pacing. We're likely going to see a blend of the early 2000s street world alongside carefully placed flashbacks that reveal just enough of the past to explain the present. Not everything needs to be shown. Some moments are more powerful when they're implied, discussed, or remembered differently by different characters.